What if one of the men who helped shape the United States Constitution simply disappeared from history? No great monuments, no famous quotes in schoolbooks, just a name buried in the footnotes of America's founding. Today, we're talking about Charles Pinckney, a man born into privilege, tested by war, who walked the halls of the Constitutional Convention, and whose ideas helped lay the foundation of the world's oldest living democracy. Yet, most people have never even heard of him. This is his story. Charles Pinckney was born on October 26, 1757, in Charleston, South Carolina, or as it was called then, Charlestown. His family was part of the elite planter class, owners of sprawling estates and hundreds of enslaved people. From birth, Charles's path seemed written for him: wealth, influence, and a life steeped in Southern aristocracy. But what no one could have predicted was that this young man, barely in his 30s, would one day leave a mark on the U.S. Constitution itself. Charles grew up in a world of contradictions. His tutors trained him in Enlightenment ideals, liberty, justice, and reason, while his family's fortune was built on human bondage. From an early age, he learned to navigate that paradox. He read Locke, Montesquieu, and Blackstone, and dreamed of politics and public life. By the time the American Revolution broke out, Charles was only 19. Still, he joined the local militia, eager to fight for independence from Britain. But his war was short-lived. In 1780, when British troops captured Charleston, Pinckney was taken prisoner. He spent nearly a year in captivity, an experience that hardened him and deepened his sense of American identity. He would later call it the turning point that opened my eyes to what freedom truly meant. When the war ended, the young Pinckney entered politics. He joined the Continental Congress and quickly earned a reputation as a sharp, articulate thinker. He was bold, sometimes too bold, and not afraid to challenge older, more established figures. Then in 1787 came his greatest stage, the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. Imagine it, a humid summer, the air thick with debate. Dozens of delegates arguing over how to design a government that could survive longer than the fragile Articles of Confederation. Among them sat Charles Pinckney, just 29 years old, representing South Carolina. He wasn't a quiet observer. He came armed with his own plan, a full draft of a new constitution known as the Pinckney Plan. Though the original document has been lost to history, many of his ideas found their way into the final version of the U.S. Constitution. The separation of powers, a bicameral legislature, the concept of a strong executive branch. These all echoed Pinckney's proposals. But here's where the story takes a twist. Despite his contributions, his role was slowly erased from the spotlight. Why? Partly politics, partly timing. After the Constitution was adopted, Charles returned home to South Carolina and became deeply entangled in the messy world of early American politics. He served as governor of South Carolina multiple times. He fought for the ratification of the Constitution in his state and defended the rights of Southern landowners. He later served as a U.S. senator, and even as minister to Spain, where he helped negotiate boundaries and trade issues for the young republic. He was, by all accounts, a tireless public servant. But his political journey also revealed his contradictions. Charles was a believer in liberty, but only for some. He defended slavery as an economic necessity and argued for the protection of slaveholding states' rights. To him, the Union depended on compromise, even if it meant moral compromise. This is what makes his life so fascinating and troubling. He stood for freedom while defending oppression. He dreamed of unity while preserving division. And in many ways, he embodied the contradictions that would haunt America for centuries. By the early 1800s, Charles Pinckney's influence began to fade. He clashed with other powerful figures, including members of his own family. Politics turned personal, and his once rising star dimmed. History, as it often does, chose its heroes: Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Hamilton, and left Pinckney in the shadows.
Even his papers, which might have preserved his legacy, were lost in the Charleston Fire of 1861. It's almost poetic. The man who helped design the Constitution meant to endure, himself vanishing into the smoke of history. Yet traces of him remain. At Snee Farm, his old plantation near Charleston, the National Park Service maintains a small historic site in his name. Visitors walk through quiet fields and restored buildings, trying to imagine the man who once walked there. Brilliant, flawed, ambitious, forgotten. Charles Pinckney died in 1824, at the age of 67. He had lived long enough to see the nation he helped create grow stronger and more divided. He was proud of his work, yet haunted by its consequences. So why does Charles Pinckney matter today? Because his story reminds us that history isn't made only by the men whose faces end up on currency or monuments. It's shaped by thinkers whose ideas outlived their names. His life forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. That freedom and hypocrisy can coexist. That genius can be flawed. And that the foundations of democracy are often built by imperfect hands. When you read the Constitution today, when you see the balance of power between states in the federal government, or the separation between executive, legislative, and judicial branches, you're seeing a trace of Charles Pinckney's mind. A ghost in the document, a voice that still echoes, quietly, beneath the louder names of history. So next time someone asks you about America's founding fathers, don't just think of Washington crossing the Delaware or Jefferson writing the Declaration. Remember the young South Carolinian who came to Philadelphia with a dream of structure, stability, and liberty, and who gave everything to make it real. Charles Pinckney, the forgotten architect of the American Constitution.